Because just in the last couple of hours, Vancouver's mayor and Vancouver's police chief held a media conference in response to several recent high-profile assaults in the city, random assaults. Police Chief Adam Palmer included new information about the man suspected of stabbing two people downtown just yesterday.
The suspect in this case is a 46-year-old man who is known to police and appears to have mental health challenges. Though he has a history with police, we have not had significant dealings with him here in Vancouver. We believe he has previously spent time in Surrey and Delta after returning to Canada from Thailand in 2022, where he spent time in custody overseas for multiple offenses, including breaking into a bank, causing damage inside of that premises, and overstaying his tourist visa.
So that was VPD Chief Adam Palmer speaking just a few hours ago. So with us here in studio right now, and it's so good to see you too, our Soapbox Social panel. Kyla Lee is a Vancouver criminal lawyer, and she works with Acumen Law Corporation. Kyla, hello.
Hi.
And Mo Amir is the host of the podcast, This is VANCOLOUR. Hello to you.
Hi, long time no see.
I know, it's a little bit of a reunion because I was sitting in on the early edition, and I keep putting out the email for the early edition. It's just kind of stuck in my brain right now. But this is big news. This is something that does not happen very often. Mm-hmm. It was a scary situation yesterday afternoon as it was developing, and our news reporters were covering. But Kyla, what did you think about what you just heard?
I mean, it kind of feels like a bit of a lack of accountability. He hasn't been in Vancouver. We think he's been somewhere else, and he committed crimes overseas that he spent time in custody for. This isn't our fault. This must be somebody else's fault. Somebody else has failed here, and that put the public at risk. But don't come looking at us. We're not to blame.
Oh, interesting that you heard that. I was expecting you just to react to the assaults themselves, but I did say what you heard from the police chief. Mo, what about you?
Yeah, it's a very sad thing that happened, obviously. I think when you have the mayor and the chief of police the next day coming out together in a press conference, they really are trying to get ahead of this thing. So I do agree with Kyla to a certain degree that, they're trying to deflect attention from them or as if it's their failure. Mm-hmm. One thing that was touched on that clip is this idea of a mental health crisis, which certainly the mayor also touched on as well. Mayor Ken Sim also touched on this idea that we need help from the federal government. So again, whether that's this person returning to Canada or perhaps being known to other jurisdictions of police, there did seem to be a little bit of deflection. But I think it is smart politically for the mayor because, again, he came into office on this idea of being tough on crime and having a compassionate lens for it. And so the fact that we do still have stranger attacks, not in the same numbers pre-2022, I think is concerning, and there are a lot of people asking for accountability. Right.
Now, Kyla, point out attacks like this are horrific. They're also relatively rare, hard to predict, of course, unless someone is on your radar. What do you think can be done about it from now?
Oh, well, I mean, there are obvious long-term solutions like providing more support and mental health resources, dealing with issues of poverty and a lack of housing. These are the things we keep saying over and over again.
All tied together, yeah.
For people, your day-to-day self, all you really can do is, use your own personal safety mechanisms. Make sure that you have a phone with you, that you can call the police if something happens. Make sure you have something that you can use to defend yourself, like your keys in your hand. These are the things that as women, we get taught from a young age, but I think now it's good common sense advice for everybody until we're at a situation where we're able to stop the systemic problems that are causing these issues to continue to occur.
Yeah. I'll say, so they have a suspect in this latest attack, the stabbing yesterday, but we still don't have a suspect from the woman who was attacked in Stanley Park on Monday. There's still someone on the loose, supposedly. Do you have any thoughts, Mo, about where the city should go from here or the police department?
I'm not sure because I think the police department or the VPD has certainly got pretty much everything it's wanted from this council. I'm sure they want more, and that might be coming down the pipeline. It's very tough to hire mental health care workers, so that's very difficult. It's very hard to hire doctors in general. So a lot of the things that Kyla's talking about, I agree with 100%, but it's also recognizing the realities that these things just don't come about from political will alone. I think it requires a lot more political will, certainly. One thing the mayor did stress, though, is that Vancouver is safe. That's pretty much how he opened this press conference. Even Chief Palmer mentioned that the crime severity index has decreased in the city of Vancouver, where it has rised in the rest of the country. And so while I know this is no solace to the victims or their families, like these events are horrific, we should still keep things in perspective that Vancouver, relatively speaking, is still a pretty safe place.
Okay, no, that's a really good point, too. I want to switch gears here a little bit here, because there's been a lot of political hay being made recently about the carbon tax, as I'm sure you're both well aware. Let's just listen to the latest from Pierre Poilievre.
This year, groceries are going to cost $700 more than they did last year for the average family. And in the middle of all of this, what does the NDP and this Prime Minister choose? To raise taxes. Raise taxes on food and fuel, on heat and homes. Raise taxes on all the materials that go into building a home, which will raise taxes on all who buy the home. Raise taxes on heating that home. Raise taxes on the gas and diesel needed to get to work to earn a paycheck to make payments on that home. And raise taxes on the farmers who make the food, the truckers who ship the food, the grocers who sell the food, and therefore all who buy the food, as if the desperation were not bad enough.
Pierre Poilievre. Mo, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
I think the reality is, and my apologies to, the environmental movement or people who like the carbon tax is a political loser right now. And Pierre Poilievre is one of the key reasons why it is. I'm not saying it's a bad policy, but it's, in very simplistic terms, you can spin it in the way that he just did and blame literally every problem we have in the country on the carbon tax. And unfortunately for proponents of the carbon tax, they haven't been able to get it out of that scapegoat role. They haven't been able to effectively explain why it's valuable or why we need it. And, you have certainly the Prime Minister holding on to it and not really, that's obviously not helping his popularity. But I think with Premier Eby, he's in a different spot. He is correct in saying that if BC was to get rid of the carbon tax and get rid of the April 1st increase, there would actually be less money returning to British Columbia. So I think the Premier is strategically in a place that makes sense on the carbon tax, but certainly across the country, this is not one that you want to hang your hat on.
Well, and a lot of people have to remember, we've had a carbon tax since 2008.
Yeah, it's never been an election issue.
It has never been an election issue. It's not really part of the federal conversation right now either, except when you have Pierre Poilievre and David Eby sort of debating this in public. How important of an issue do you think this is, really, Kyla?
I don't think that it's an important issue for as many people as maybe the Conservatives like to think. I mean, I like to consider myself an informed voter, and I'm listening to Pierre Poilievre just now talking about all the things I'm paying carbon tax on. I'm like, I don't think I pay carbon tax on my groceries.
I think it's about 14 cents per liter on our gasoline in Metro Vancouver.
Sure, and that's fair, and that makes sense. I'm also not making any major changes to my life because I'm paying more for carbon tax at the pump. I'm not decreasing the driving. The driving I do, I consider to be necessary. And when it's not necessary to drive, I don't drive. So, to me, I don't think that it's that much of an issue. And it's definitely not pushing me to consider voting in a different political way. In fact, the sort of constant complaints about it and the refrain about the carbon tax, if anything, is turning me away from ever considering voting that way.
I do think that we should be careful about dismissing, the overall cost savings if the carbon tax were to disappear, though. Even if it's, let's say, $50 a month for a family, that might be taking your kids to McDonald's. And I think that means a lot to a lot of people. And, while I don't think it's as overblown as Mr. Poilievre makes it out to be, I do think we should recognize that times are really tight. People are struggling with affordability costs, and wherever they can save a few bucks here and there is going to be appealing in whatever election comes next.
But that's why governments step in with rebates for these types of things for the low-income earning people and for the low-income earning families.
rebates, which a lot of people don't even recognize when I talk to them, right? Like that's part of the issue is that people go, oh, I don't think this actually covers how much I paid in the carbon tax. Like, how are you going to debate someone on that? It's very tricky.
But it's interesting. He's hammering it home, right? And as Kyla points out, for her, that alienates her. It's like, just get away. But is this a smart political strategy for Poilievre?
I think it has been. I think actually they really want to go to an election right now. I feel like they think that they're going to plateau or peak at this popularity. There's always the risk that he's peaking right now. And clearly he's hot, and clearly the Axe the Tax is resonating with people, but will it do so in 18 months? Remains to be seen. And again, it's probably not something that they want to risk either.
Okay, we like to have a little bit of fun at the end of our conversations. And there were all kinds of things we were bandying about chatting about today. It was World Happiness Day yesterday, but it's also, first day of spring this week. And a lot of people writing into us yesterday about decluttering and spring cleaning, like especially when we had that, several days of sunny weather in a row. It was kind of cool. People were saying, I got to clean the house, get rid of stuff. That's all right. So Kyla, spring cleaning, what's your take?
Oh, I am like a hoarder.
She is.
I won't get rid of anything. And, like when I've had family members pass away, I just tell my family gently, take everything you want. And then whatever's left, you just put in my basement.
Right.
So I will not be spring cleaning my house or anything like that. But I do think that, I will be spring cleaning in my mind all of the political allegiances and politicians. And I'm going to look for a spring cleaning of our political candidacy with upcoming elections.
I see. What does that even mean?
Hopefully a lot of fresh blood and new ideas.
Oh, I see.
Are we still friends? Do we still have any friends? Is
this an out with the old kind of a thing? That's what you're doing with people. What about for you, Mo?
Yeah, I mean, I actually am doing spring cleaning in a sense. I'm also a hoarder. However, I'm very neat in my hoarding.
Is this sentimental hoarding, or is this just I might use it one day kind of hoarding?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a mixture, a hybrid of hoarding. So I have like little nooks, things that are tucked away, and I've started to clean out some of that stuff. But then also revisiting some of my New Year's resolutions and seeing how they're going. And some are going pretty well, and some not so good. So just doing a reset of like, okay, let's get back on that track.
Well, I wish you well with that.
What
really
about you?
do. You hybrid hoarders. No, I was saying I keep things pretty neat. Normally, everything goes into the cupboard and into the crawl space, and I out of sight, out of mind. I was saying that yesterday. Like I'll get it out of my sight, but then I don't really deal with it, and I'm going to have to deal with it because it piles up behind closed doors.
Yeah,
because it's just one more thing. I'll just move this a little bit more and shove something else in there, and I just like deal with it later. But I like sort of a clean space around me. But I've got to work on that next time sun comes out. Good to see you both, really.
Nice to see
Thanks,
you.
Gloria.
Okay, that's our Soapbox Social panel. Mo Amir is the host of the This is VANCOLOUR podcast. Kyla Lee is a criminal lawyer for Acumen Law Corporation. They're here with us on Thursday afternoons.